Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Talk with Coach. I'm your host, Becca Goldsberry, executive sales and leadership coach with Southwestern Consulting. This podcast is all about learning from the best in the business, those who have walked the walk and talked the talk, and who are really ready to share their journeys, their lessons, and their hard earned wisdom. We're going to discover some invaluable tips today that can literally transform your business or your leadership skill sets, and even things that we can take away and use in our personal life. So, buckle up and get ready for another episode of Talk with Coach. I am so honored to have our next guest on, Skye Nicholson. Her and I have really had the pleasure of getting to know each other over the last few months through a networking group that you guys have already heard me talk about, the Lead Hership of Columbus. And I cannot wait for her to just share her expertise with you guys. I'm excited to learn more from Skye today. So let me tell you a little bit about her because she's amazing. So Skye is the founder and CEO of Wellbeing Workshops company, where she conducts group seminars, workshops, retreats, and one-on-one coaching. As a certified life coach, she's also a published author, you guys. She is a former engineer and teacher. You guys, her background is so cool. I can't wait for her to tell a little bit more. She also guides participants through simple and relatable tactics for managing the buildup of daily stress that leads to workplace burnout. Yeah, you heard me right. We're going to talk about how we can eliminate stress so we can prevent burnout, you guys. We talk about this all the time. This is something we always talk about with my guests. So we've got an expert on this. She is originally from Chicago. Skye, I'm just so excited. Just so excited.
We're not going to eliminate stress.
Well, we're gonna try, let's we can do all the things. We can try to eliminate. Um, but originally she's from Chicago. She now resides in Columbus, Indiana, where she lives with her husband, two kids, three cats, and a dog. One unique thing and skill that she is known for is using poetry and creative journaling as a tool for processing stress and creating community. So, what I love about Skye the most is her ability to genuinely connect with others and a desire to just truly help people live a healthier, less stressed, less burnout, and more fulfilled life. So, Skye, welcome to Talk with Coach.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
I am super excited to be here. I am very honored to be on this podcast with you.
Well, I'm excited. So, I want to dive in. How in the world do you use poetry and creative journaling to help process stress? Like, what does this look like? Fill us in.
Well, first of all, just when we start by recognizing what stress is in our bodies
Mm,
and realizing that um, when we're stressed, it's not that we're broken. We're actually doing exactly what our bodies are meant to be doing. Is stress is a natural response to any sort of perceived threat or danger. And so our body ramps up the hormones of adrenaline and cortisol and prepares us for fight, flight, freeze, to protect us. And so stress has been evolutionarily important, not only to humans, but to every single living thing on the planet. So, one of our proven ways to reduce stress is through creativity. If you think about right brain, left brain, how
yeah.
like the right brain is our creative space and the left brain is our more logical and analytical. So, stress and anxiety are primarily a left brain dominant. And creativity is right brain. And so whenever we slip into a place of creativity, no matter what it is, our right brain takes over and our body starts to begin to feel safe and thereby lowers the stress hormones, adrenaline, and cortisol. So that's kind of the science behind it. So you mentioned I used to be a teacher. I was a science
You know,
teacher for 10 years. And so I I love to bring science into everything I do because I think that once people begin to understand what's going on biologically in our bodies when we're feeling things like stress, anxiety, burnout, then that awareness gives us the power to be able to take back control over our own experiences.
Mm,
So, um, poetry has been one of the biggest tools for my own personal growth and healing journey. And when I started writing poetry again, I used to write poetry when I was a teenager. I wrote a lot of angsty, um, I listened to The Cure and Depeche Mode. So a lot of my
oh,
poetry is like,
love who
very
doesn't love
emo.
the Cure in Depeche Mode? I mean, come on, let's be
It was
real.
emo before emo was emo.
It was. You were a trendsetter, let's just face it.
Yeah, me and all the other black leggings
Yeah.
wearing teenagers. So, but yeah, poetry came back to me as an adult when I was in my own healing journey.
Mhm.
Um, so I got sober back in 2018 from excessive alcohol use. And so, poetry just started kind of, I don't know, it clawed its way out of me, I guess is a good way to say it,
Okay.
is all of this stuff that needed to be healed started showing up in poems. And once I started writing again, all of those old shame stories, that old trauma just came up and out of me through poems. And so the more I wrote, the more healed I became. And so I started to create spaces for other people to use poetry as their own healing. And I started with open mic nights in Columbus. In my community, I started these spaces for women where people could just bring whatever it is that they wrote to these spaces, and we just held space for each other. It was not a slam, it was not a competition, it was just supportive and compassionate. And people would show up with these little wadded up pieces of paper, these old notebooks that had been in their nightstand for years, and they would open it up and stand shaking in front of the microphone, and they would read these poems, and sometimes they would cry. And so all of the women, we would be sitting in the audience and just hearing one another, like hearing the words that resonated in our own hearts coming from some other woman. And, we'd come out of this and everybody just like, we felt so much better. And so I feel like my story is already going in so many directions, but even through crying, right? Crying, tears is a way that our body releases cortisol. So cortisol actually comes out in our tears. So, um, experiencing other people's poetry that can bring you to tears is also a way of processing out your own stress. And so through my own journey, I ended up writing 2 books of poetry and then created a guided journal so that I could have a concrete space, a concrete space for other women to be able to write and process their own words. And so it's got writing prompts and inspirational poems and quotes in there that kind of helps bring out those healing words from other people.
I love that, and that is so powerful, and I have to think about it. Growing up, I loved drawing, painting. That was my right side of my brain, creativity-wise. It was never really poetry, and now, because I don't necessarily get to do that much, it's reading, right? Like,
Mhm.
non-work stuff, reading. Um, but I as you were talking, I was thinking like, "Oh, in high school, I used to love ceramics. I love sitting on a wheel and just building ceramics. Loved it. Took multiple classes my senior and junior year. And then in college, I kept taking art classes. I was the only basically non art major, probably taking, you know, upper level ceramics classes because that was my outlet. I was able to hop on a wheel and, you know, have fun. And then I loved painting. And so my sister and I, for I don't know, probably a decade, my sister and I would just paint furniture for people. Like, I don't know how many Jimmy Buffett Margaritaville scenes we have over all over Jackson County, in people's, pool rooms and stuff because we painted chairs, we painted murals, we painted tables for people, um, because that was my outlet, and I'm pretty sure that was my sister's outlet too. So I love that because you're right. That was one way we totally got the stress out.
Yeah, and, art therapy has gained more and more notoriety over the past few decades, right? And so people, I think, are, recognizing it as, like a serious science in a way.
Hmm.
And yet and creative writing too, right?
Yeah,
But as I've looked through scholarly research and everything, there's not a whole lot done around the use of poetry, and, um, and I think that there's also a lot of stigma about poetry, right? You
yeah,
get in high school, even though I wrote poetry in high school, I hated, English class poetry. Like, I hated that we were forced to read these poems and then analyze them piece by piece, and
yeah.
I remember my senior year English teacher giving me a C minus in the poetry unit because he said my analysis of this poem was wrong. And yet my analysis of it was what it meant to me, you know?
Yeah.
And so I for the past 3 years I've actually done a poetry residency at a high school in Batesville, Indiana, where I go in for 5 weeks and partner with an English teacher, Paul Satchwell. Hey Paul, if you're listening. But what I do is we help to unteach poetry. We help the students unlearn everything they've learned about Shakespeare and sonnets and what poetry is supposed to be, and help them reintegrate the process of poetry. So I feel like, much like you're talking about, ceramics on the wheel, right? There's so much there in that process of putting your hands into the clay, and your mind can kind of shut off, your logic mind, right, can shut off, and your subconscious can process through a lot of things without even thinking about it. So when you're done with that creative process, you feel released.
Mhm.
So I want to introduce poetry as a process rather than a product. So using words as the medium, it just doesn't matter really what your poem looks like at the end. It's the process of writing it, and then maybe even the next level process of sharing it, showing or reading your words to somebody else and being validated in that way is a huge mental health tool.
Right. Okay, so I have an idea.
Yeah.
Who can you partner up with to do this research? Like, this is like a really like a master species. Like, you need to partner up with some like a grad student or two who can do the grunt work while you help analyze it with them.
Yeah, who's
I
out
don't know.
there?
Who's out there? Okay, guys, if you're listening, um, you know, reach out to Skye and say, "Hey, I would love to partner with you," because I think that would be fascinating. I always like to find interesting topics that doesn't have a lot of research
Mm,
or data. Um, because you're right, like a lot of people left brain, they still need that data to say, is this validated? Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So this past, August, I was at the National Wellness Summit in Austin, Texas, and I was presenting this piece called Morning Wellness. So it was like people in the conference could come in the morning, and we would do these activities to kind of help just center you and process everything from the conference.
Sure.
And so I brought poetry activities. So I did this for 3 mornings of the conference, and people at first were like, "Oh, it is a poetry," as they bring all their preconceived ideas. But
Right.
um, one of the things I do is that I have, and this is like, I steal stuff, not steal. I borrow stuff. I reintegrate stuff from teaching,
Okay.
activities that and processes that help students kind of come into a space of willingness to learn, right? So
Yeah.
one of the things I did with these people at the wellness summit is we did a poetry snowball fight. So I did acrostic poem words. So acrostic, if you remember back into 6th grade, is
Okay.
when you have a word that goes down the side, like wellness, right? So Wellness. And then each line of the poem starts with that letter.
Okay.
So I gave each person a piece of paper with a six-letter word that related to wellness. And so the idea is that each person would write one line of poetry. So you get 45 seconds and you would write the first line and then you crumple it up and you throw it across the room. And so then you pick up a different paper and you open it up and you write the second line and then you crumple it up and you throw it across the room. And so we do this a number of times until the last time you pick up the paper and there's a six-line poem that we've written collaboratively. And, they're not, I mean, some of them are
Right.
actually good.
Yeah.
Right? Some of them are pretty
Yeah.
good. But in the end, we read them all and then I had people go around and talk about their experience and how this experience helped them with their stress. So we talked about our stress beforehand, right? And then we talked about our stress after the poetry experience. And I think so many people were surprised at how much better they felt, how much more relaxed they were. So we had, not only the process of creative writing, creativity, but also we had the social interaction of just kind of laughing and throwing the papers around. We had the physical movement of
Yeah.
up and getting the papers and opening it up. So all of these different components that are all proven stress relievers built into this one activity. And then in the end, everybody's stress was lowered. We all felt connected and relaxed. And so then we could move on to whatever deeper, more intellectual work that we had in front of us.
Okay, you just gave everybody who is a business owner, an HR director, or somebody who plans events for a company team, you just like, gave them a really great icebreaker.
Yeah.
Like, I
But
love
see, I
that.
hate the word icebreaker because I feel like icebreaker makes it sound like a fluff thing.
Yeah, you're correct. It is more. But like, this is what a great way to go a little bit deeper for a team meeting.
Because the truth is that when we are in a state of stress response, even if it's kind of that low grade, like baseline stress response that a lot of us are operating in on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
our prefrontal cortex, the logic part of our brain, is offline. It's kind of fogged out. And so when we go into business meetings or when we're doing our own work or whatever, we're not we're not operating from a place of full mental capacity. And
Yeah.
so to do activities that allow us to reduce that level of adrenaline and cortisol or that stress allows us to come back into a state of more mental clarity.
Oh, I love that. Such good food for thought. So, how did you get started in this industry? Because you were a teacher, engineer, you had such a phenomenal background. And then how did this all start for you?
Well, so I've lived a lot of life between then and now, right? And yeah, my original career was in engineering, and I left that career after just a few years and became a teacher. And that transition, I think, was one of the biggest turning points in my life. Was kind of engineering, thinking this was something I was supposed to do. I was a kid that was good at science and math, and so you sort of get like pushed in this direction of you need to be in engineering,
Right.
and it, it was okay, but it wasn't really for me. So I had at the time I had a really really good friend who was an English teacher, and she was like, Skye, they need science and math teachers so bad that you could start working in the classroom right now without a teaching degree. So I got an emergency certification and became a classroom science teacher. I taught ninth grade earth science at a charter school in Kansas City and began my first day of teaching in a classroom with 30 kids, having never had a course in how to be a teacher. So it was like trial by fire, and I loved it. I mean, it was
Yeah.
hard. It was it was hard, but I loved it. And so I ended up going back to school and getting my master's in curriculum and instruction. And then I was a classroom teacher for 10 years. I became the department chair of a multi campus high school in Chicago. I was the founding science teacher of a new charter school up in Chicago. And uh, absolutely great career. And it was incredibly stressful. So in all of those education classes that I ultimately took to get my master's, they never talked about secondary trauma. They never talked about how, because I taught in the inner city for my entire career.
Yeah.
And, so they never talked about how to manage everything that I was carrying as a result of, working with high needs students in in a demographic where a lot of them came into high school with 3rd grade reading levels. A lot of them didn't have parental support. There was a lot of behavior issues. Um, I loved that part of my job, but then when I left and went back to my apartment, it was like I was still carrying all of it, and I just like, I had no tools of how to process any of that. And what I did for my entire teaching career is that I dealt with it by drinking.
Mm.
And so for my entire adult life, I was a high functioning alcoholic. And drinking away stress, it's a misnomer. It doesn't actually take it away. It just like
Really? You don't think,
right? It feels like it does, but like
right?
that's the thing, right?
Absolutely.
It feels
Yeah.
like it does. But it's
Yep.
like throwing a weighted blanket over your
Yeah.
stress. You're just like,
Absolutely.
oh, good, I can't feel it. And then you take the blanket off in the morning and your stress was like gremlins on they eat after midnight or they get wet
Yeah.
or weird as they do, right? They multiply and they turn evil.
Yep.
So, um, so yeah, after I got sober and I quit drinking, I was a stay-at-home mom for several years, and I realized, in my healing journey, I was writing poetry, and I was really kind of like pulling out some of these shadow stories, and I started helping other women. So I became a certified empowerment coach, and I started helping other women that wanted to change their relationship with alcohol as well. So coaching, as you know, is a
Mhm.
lot like, well, there's a lot of aspects in teaching that are coaching. So
Mhm.
what you're doing, right, is you're helping people become better versions of themselves.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
you're not doing it for them,
Nope.
but you're kind of helping them find the edges. You're helping them see into the blind spots that they can't see themselves. And
Absolutely.
so it was a natural next step after a teaching career was to coach adults and to help other people. And, so I was doing that for a while, kind of this one-on-one coaching, really focusing on alcohol use. And I was approached by a local organization here in Columbus called the Alliance for Substance Abuse Progress. And they said, "Hey, Skye, we would like you to do a workshop all about prevention for alcohol use." So after the pandemic, we saw that excessive alcohol use for adults was like on this exponential rise, and we want to do something in our community to really address this. And so we're going to do this prevention workshop. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Like, but nobody's going to come to a workshop about prevention for alcohol use, right? Like, I know because I was a drinker for 25 years, like, I would have never gone to that.
Yep. Yep. Because
This is
that
a
means you would have to admit it,
yes.
right?
Yeah, you have to admit it, and, we don't really want to. Like, I don't like, now one of my biggest vices is scrolling on my phone and eating too many Girl Scout cookies, and,
Okay.
admitting that I have a problem with Thin Mints is hard to do, right? So, um, so I was talking to them and I was like, let's look at really the reason why so many people are over drinking.
Mhm.
And one of the biggest reasons is that we are stressed out. I mean, I think that after the pandemic, it started becoming more into the public consciousness that we are overstressed. Our anxiety is through the roof. People are overwhelmed, overworked. We're balancing too much. And so this kind of all kind of was brought into the zeitgeist. And I'm like, we need to help people figure out some simple tools to manage that daily stress rather than turning to the stuff that numbs us, whether it's alcohol or thin mints or our phones or whatever, right?
Right.
So that is how I first developed my stress management workshop was in partnership with Alliance for Substance Abuse Progress. And I said, if we serve up a workshop on stress management, people will come.
Yes.
And then all of that stuff can help people like reflect on the things that they're doing in their life that maybe are adding to their stress rather than helping them to manage it.
Correct.
And so in that workshop, I always tell my own story. I always talk about my story with teaching, with drinking, with my own struggles for managing stress. And as you said in my intro about eliminating stress, girl, if I had the magic pill to eliminate stress, I would be on an island in Hawaii.
Yeah, I was gonna say we'd have our own island somewhere in the middle of someplace warm because Indianapolis right now it's 23 degrees.
Yeah,
So we'd be someplace warm right now.
yeah.
Absolutely. I was gonna say stress leads to so many incidental decisions made with leaders, with team members, because and I see it all the time, within coaching the last 14 years, sales professionals, executives, leaders. I've seen it where because when stress is so high, the decision making process, how we communicate with others, it just goes by the wayside. I don't it's like they're not even acting themselves. Like if they could have an outer body experience and just look at what they're saying and how they're saying it and how they're handling the stress, I think they would be appalled sometimes.
Yeah. Well, but that's but your brain is doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Because if you are in a situation where you are being attacked by a bear,
Yep.
your frontal lobe, that logic decision making has to shut off.
That's
Because
right.
if standing there thinking about, oh, should I logically do? I mean, you're dead. So
Yep.
your brain is just helping you survive, right? By shutting off the logic part,
Yep.
being emotional,
Hmm.
yet it doesn't serve us when we're trying to be in a leadership position, when we're trying
That's
to
right.
effectively communicate at work, you
Yeah.
know?
So what is one or two ways that leaders or even just us just as humans can make sure that we're not always when we're so emotional, we just do things all wrong.
Mhm.
Like, whoa, how do you what's one or two ways that we can do that?
Well, the first key is awareness of your elevated stress response. So
Okay.
one of the first things I talk about is having people reflect on what are their signs that their stress response is starting to rise. Because once we're aware of it, then
Mhm.
that's when we have the power to do something about it. So that's one of the things we talk about. Like, what do you feel it physically? Do you feel it in your head, in your stomach? Are there behavior traits that show up for you? One of mine, which I didn't realize until I started doing this work, is that I become hypercritical
Mm.
of everything. So I had done a workshop, in front of 30 people or whatever, and I got back in my car after it was all done, and even though, I love doing workshops, it's a stressor, right? Standing in front of people and talking, even if
Oh,
you love it, right? It's a
that's
stressor.
right. That's
So
right.
I was sitting in my car all by myself after this workshop, and I was just like, I started going through my head all of the things that were wrong with my husband. Now, he wasn't in the car. I wasn't talking to him on the phone. I was just like in my car thinking about like, I don't know if he took the garbage out. He needs to shave his beard. Like, I mean, just like, and I recognized in that moment because I had literally just talked about it in my workshop. I was like, I'm still stressed. Like I still have high cortisol and adrenaline levels from this workshop because my mind is criticizing everybody around that's not even around me. So yeah, first step is to recognize like what are your signs that you are in a place of elevated stress. So
So
that's step 1.
okay, so basically in emotional intelligence, we need to have some self-awareness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There's your EQ tip for the day, people. We need
Right.
self-awareness. Okay.
Right.
Love
And
it.
and that's hard for people. So
It is.
I've done this workshop in probably I don't know 150 different businesses, organizations, community groups, government. One time I was at a public works department, so I had 45, mostly men. Some of them were on work release, had ankle bracelets on. And they were mandated to be in the stress management workshop led by me, who self-identifies as a unicorn. No, I'm just kidding. Led by me, and this lady named Skye is going to come in and talk about stress. And so they were just like, they were not having it. And so, part of what I had to do in this workshop at first is to just get them to feel comfortable enough to even admit that they experience stress. Because for a lot of people, men, especially men of a certain age, um, admitting that you are stressed, feeling stressed, overwhelmed is, it's kind of taboo.
Yeah.
I had a guy in that workshop be like, as we were talking and kind of reflecting on it, he raised his hand and he was like, "My dad always said that stress is for," I'll use a different word than he did, but wusses.
Yes.
And so he's like, growing up, that was not, you did not feel it. And I asked him, I was like, "Well, wow." I'm like, "Well, how'd that work out?" And he's like, "My dad died from a heart attack at 55." And it's like, well, yeah. Yeah. So, so that like you said, self-awareness is like the first hurdle. And I think for some people that hurdle itself can be kind of high because we have to get real with our own internal beliefs about whether or not it's okay to even admit that
Yeah.
we are stressed.
Yep. And that's a powerful step, you
Yeah.
know, even if you just think about like all the different things in life, if you don't have self-awareness about any of those things, how can you make any positive change for the good?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah. Well, going back to my alcohol use for 25 years,
Yeah.
that self-awareness, like, it
Mhm,
was there. It was back here,
mhm,
and I
mhm,
hated it. I hated any time it would pop up because that meant I might have to, like, get real with myself and
mhm.
change things, and I didn't want to because for so many years, that numbing tool was, like, my safety blanket, and so to think about having the awareness of realizing that this thing I was doing every night was actually hurting me instead of helping me, like, that would mean that I'd have to, like, give up that baby blanket, and I wasn't ready for it. I didn't want to.
Wow. So tell me, and I want you to share with everybody a little bit about the workshops you do and kind of who they're ideal for, because I have the materials and it's phenomenal. And you and I have talked about this. And I just think more workplaces need to do something along these lines.
Yeah, so, I have kind of several different standard workshops that I suggest to workplaces, and I think that the first one is really my flagship workshop, Managing the Stress Cycle, that is based on the thing I developed at the very beginning when I had that partnership with Alliance for Substance Abuse Progress, because it is the entryway. It's all about the self awareness piece, and then I give out 6 tactics that are all free. They're all like under 5 minutes that people can do in their daily lives to reduce stress, and then the hope is that in that workplace, it starts to sort of shift the culture a little bit
Mhm.
to where people now have a common language to talk about stress. People have the permission to hold space for each other when perhaps there is a stressful meeting or a deadline or a confrontation or something
Mhm.
that there is permission to allow time for processing the stress that comes up. And so I believe that this work around stress management is for everybody in every industry, in every field. Um, whether you're at the public works department, whether you are in the C suite at the top of a building in downtown Chicago, whether you're a doctor or a teacher or a stay at home mom,
Right.
everybody. I love it when um, I have a workshop that is in somewhat homogeneous because it helps when people are talking. I do a lot of small group breakout sessions. And I find that the most powerful stuff happens when people are talking in their small groups and they're seeing themselves reflected in each other. So they're realizing that they have shared experiences, shared challenges, and just that validation itself is so it's so powerful in what it can open up around not just our self-awareness, but then our next step, the willingness to do the thing that helps us.
Yeah. Wow. It's gotta be so rewarding to see the aha moment on people's faces
Oh yeah.
after they go through that, right? It's
Yeah.
like
Well, that was my favorite part about teaching too, right?
yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, one last question here for you, and then I want you to be able to tell everybody where you can buy your poetry books and then definitely your journal. So, my question for you is if you had to boil it down, what are the top three pieces of advice you would give anybody looking to grow their own business or their leadership skills or even their own personal development skill sets?
I think the first and most important piece of advice is to be genuine,
Mhm.
be vulnerable, and be true to yourself. I have found, that was something I learned early on in my teaching career is that when I was genuine, so, I was the only white person in a classroom full of all African American students in many situations, not every year, but in many situations. And when I was able to be vulnerable and genuine in myself, my students began to trust me and relationships were built. And then from there, that's when I could be a really effective teacher and coach. And so I learned that lesson then, and I carry that with me into every single thing I do. Um, Sometimes it's hard
Yeah.
to, to kind of put yourself out there in that way, but that is truly one of the most effective things. And the other thing is to remember that that this life is meant to be enjoyed. Work, the work that you do is meant to bring you joy. It should bring you joy. And if it doesn't, then you got to change. Um, Being a full-time mom, I have 2 kids, they're 10 and 12,
Mhm.
and trying to start my own business and trying to my own healing journey and all this, it can feel overwhelming. And when I get to that place of just being like, "Oh, there's too much, it's hard. Oh, I can't do it." Like to come back to, okay, you know, where do I find joy in this? And what you just said about, the rewarding of seeing people have aha moments, seeing shifts happening and going into those places and remembering why I do what I do is really important. I think that was 2 things, but maybe it's 3. Let's call it 3.
Yeah. Okay. We'll call it 3.
Call it
You're
3.
good. Okay. So where can people buy your books, buy the journal, do all the things, connect with you?
So, my books are all available on Amazon. So, if you're watching on video, here's what the journal looks like. It's called Elemental Alchemy. And then I have 2 poetry books, so I can hold them up to you.
Ooh,
Uh,
fabulous.
Unexpected Alchemy. So this is my first one. It's kind of about the sobriety journey. And then this is my most recent one, The Other Side of the Stars, which is about that continuation of rediscovery of self. When you're in that place where you're just like, ooh, I think I might the real me might be coming out and
Right?
shining and sparkling. So those are all available on Amazon. You can search up Skye Nicholson. There is another Skye Nicholson out there in the world. She's a boxer from Australia. That is not me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's okay. There's another Rebecca Goldsberry, and she's in California.
Is she cool?
I don't know. I haven't found much on her yet.
I like
So,
to think that the other Skye Nicholson and I would be friends if
yeah,
we were
yeah.
to meet.
I would think the California version of me would probably be she better be awesome. So,
She's really like your beach waves that you have.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, I'm channeling her today with my beach waves today. So, I love it. Sky, thank you so much for being on. You guys, this wraps up another insightful episode with Talk with Coach. A huge thank you for Sky Nicholson for just sharing such valuable knowledge, wisdom, and lessons from her incredible journey and how we each can start working on our own self awareness to help deal with stress in our lives. So, if today's episode resonated with you, or if you have a burning question or a topic you would like for us to discover on and to talk about on another episode, we'd love to hear from you. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Until next time, remember every step forward is a part of your success journey. Keep striving for greatness, keep learning, and don't forget your journey is just beginning.